Hello, I'm Debbie Bacon, aka Giblert, aka Jonathan. Glad you're here with me today as I continue to sift through my memories and reminisce about some of my favorite video games from my first 25 years. This isn't meant to be an objective list or anything like that. I'm just here to talk about some games I like, nothing more. Anyway, let's get started for today. First up for today at number 92, the short and sweet DS classic, WarioWare Touched. If you're unfamiliar with the premise, WarioWare sends a gauntlet of super short minigames at you. Each one is trivial to complete. In fact, some only require one tap of the stylus, or even less. The challenge usually comes from finding out what to do within a few seconds. It's not particularly hard. However, after you start on endless mode and start chasing high scores, the game continually speeds up and eventually does become overwhelming. Now that everyone has a smartphone, the game does seem simplistic and gimmicky. However, as a 10-year-old, this was one of the first DS games I played, so seeing the game look for every possible angle and bizarre circumstance to make use of the touch controls, microphone, and double screen felt fresh and exciting. The game also has a ton of personality in both the short intro videos for each level, as well as in each microgame, which have a ton of variety in both gameplay and visuals. The sound effects also do a great job of keeping the momentum moving and making everything feel frantic as the onslaught of bizarre tasks keep coming your way. Now, the game itself is incredibly short. You can play through every stage within a couple of hours. But keep in mind, this was a portable game, so it was always a good one to have on the go, and one I played a lot. Playing through each stage is the key to unlocking things, but the real reason to keep playing it is to see how high you can score, and like I said earlier, it can go from boringly easy to frantically difficult after a few speed-ups. For that reason, there was enough replay value to keep me busy and justify carrying it around. As a nice bonus, the game also comes with a toy room, which lets you dick around with a bunch of random gimmicks. While most of them you could easily download off your app store these days, back in 2005 that wasn't an option. As simple as they are, the toys like the magic markers and mini piano were plenty to keep 10-year-old me distracted and entertained in the same way parents distract the tablet child generation today. In today's world where mobile touchscreen games are taken for granted, WarioWare Touched, like many early DS games, seems kind of overly simplistic. Still, at the time, the game really milked every possibility out of the DS to create a fresh game, one that came with 10-year-old me often in my travels to grocery stores and family vacations. For keeping me busy on so many trips, WarioWare Touch gets a spot on my list at number 92. And now, landing at number 91, Mass Effect 3, the final chapter of BioWare's legendary sci-fi shooter RPG. This one is a unique case as I'm planning on replaying it soon since I bought the Legendary Edition. I'd like to keep moving forward on the list rather than wait to finish 100 hours of gameplay, so I'm going to take a rain check on talking about the story in depth until I can refresh my memory properly. I'll likely come back to it later, maybe as a companion video when I talk about the other games in the series. For now, to quickly summarize my thoughts, the writing in the game is kind of bad. While it's not horrific by video game standards, it doesn't hold up compared to great story-focused games or non-video game media. Still, some parts like the Krogan subplot are executed well and bring a satisfying conclusion to a plotline that's built up over the whole trilogy. Nonetheless, there are a lot of shit parts that make an otherwise amazing game smell bad. And I'm not talking about just the ending. There's a patch of turds spread throughout the whole package. Hell, I don't even think the ending is the most shittily written part of the game, although it is the most significant part. For example, the whole dead child thing the game tries to make you feel emotional about is incredibly lame, and I didn't give a flying fuck about that dead kid the whole game, yet the game kept pretending I did. And the real ultimate stinker is Kyle Link, who is supposed to be some epic rival for Shepard, but in reality is just a shitty, OC, edgy, grimdark cyber ninja character who spouts fanfiction.net level dialogue. I know the word cringe is overused, but Kyle Link really embodies the word, considering someone invented his character and unironically thought it was cool. And to continue to rag on the writing while we're at it, the way they handled Cerberus was awful. In previous games, they were an interesting, morally ambiguous organization who was evil, yet stressed that the ends justified the means, and were sometimes right. In Mass Effect 3, they're a bunch of Saturday morning cartoon villains who seem pure evil for the hell of it. And yeah, there's a plot explanation for why, but it's just a shitty and uninteresting direction to take that plotline, and I'm sure I'll remember some more things to bitch about when I finish replaying the game. So, after all that complaining, why is the game still in my top 100? Well, the good outshines the bad in the end. Yeah, I know I said the writing sucks, but there are some worthwhile moments like the aforementioned Krogan subplot. Like I said, that subplot not only felt good story-wise, but they also did a great job of making your choices from previous games actually matter. And even though I didn't like all the writing, seeing all the old characters come together for the big finale felt good, even if it did feel a bit too fanservice-y at times. Not all fanservice is bad though. The Citadel DLC quest is excellent and hilarious. The big redeeming factor though is the combat. After taking a huge step forward between the first and second game, Mass Effect 3 refined the combat to another level and made it the star of the show. I've played both Soldier and Vanguard and both felt incredible. On one hand, I really want to try a different class on my next playthrough. On the other, Vanguard's biotic charge is too much fun to give up. Compared to previous games, every gun and ability feels so much more polished and impactful. Enemy health also seemed to be balanced better, so that you don't end up unloading a million shots into a bunch of bullet sponges like you did in previous games. Unlike the other two games, which have serviceable gunplay that's carried by the narrative, I'd say Mass Effect 3 is the one game in the original trilogy worth playing, even if you don't give a shit about the story. So yeah, there's a lot of bad in Mass Effect 3, which is why it isn't higher. However, the good parts salvage it enough that it ended up being an overall great experience. Good enough to make me look forward to replaying it with all the DLC, and good enough to end up on my list at number 91. Closing this chapter at number 90, Doki Doki Literature Club, Dan Salvato's psychological horror visual novel. Major spoilers for this one, so skip it if you have any intent of playing it. I'm starting to realize that even though I talk a lot of shit about weebs and anime games, I sure do have a lot of them on my list already. Though this one only kind of counts since it's not actually a Japanese game. Anyway, going into it, I had heard there was a twist later in the game, and I would have never played it if I didn't know that, since weeb dating games aren't really my thing. I expected a more traditional horror twist, perhaps some Lovecraftian nightmare or undead creature or ghost haunting the school, or some psychotic murderous student, and I guess I was somewhat right on that last one. But I didn't expect the fourth wall breaking meta-narrative yandere slasher angle, nor did I expect to see Sayori's corpse hanging from the ceiling fan so suddenly. Breaking the fourth wall can be an extremely cool part of a story if done right, like in Metal Gear, Undertale, or Nier. Yet with so many more games trying to do similar things nowadays, it can also come off as trite or superficial. Back when Doki Doki Literature Club came out though, it was so rare enough in the West that it caught me off guard and made the game stand out. Part of what makes the dark second half hit so well isn't just breaking the fourth wall. The game builds itself up in the first couple hours for the perfect amount of time to get you invested in what is ostensibly a run-of-the-mill school life story before flipping the switch and doing some crazy shit. What also makes it so effective is that everything seems so mundane for a dating sim. I hadn't actually played any anime dating sim visual novels myself, yet all the tropes and dialogue felt exactly like what I would expect from that kind of game. Of course, getting you to play several hours to get to the weird stuff wouldn't work well if the normal part of the game sucked. And while yeah, the normal part of the game is intentionally very generic, there are enough touches to keep it interesting for just the right amount of time. The character designs are thought out well and have deservedly inspired tons and tons of fan art. I'd also bet they're a big reason so many tried the game in the first place. They all seem so generic, and yet, unlike some boring generic anime designs, they seem so distinctive and memorable. The presentation also makes everything feel cozy enough that the game just feels comfortable and hard to put down. The bright colors, cheery music, and cutesy UI go a long way. And in a way, knowing there's a twist coming actually improves the game in a way, since all the cheeriness feels mildly off when you know there's something darker beneath the surface. Another key touch to the writing is that the characters all seem to have some subtle hints at a plotline which helps keep your attention, such as Yuri's self-harm or Sayori's depression. Those hanging threads look like something that'll be developed later on, but ultimately turned out to be a red herring when Monica starts tearing reality apart. So, overall, I think my main reason for liking the game is just how well Dan Salvato set up the twist, and even though I suspected a twist was coming, Doki Doki Literature Club still managed to pull off something unexpected. A twist doesn't mean much if the story doesn't go anywhere though. Fortunately, the second half of the game gets amazingly creative with all the visual glitches and fourth wall breaking meta tricks like Monica talking directly to the player, Monica calling out your recording software, or the famous final boss battle of deleting Monica.chr from your computer to finish the game. All these clever little tricks are a great mix of comedy and creepiness. And finally, it all builds up to such a well-executed climax, capped off by Monica's simple yet touching credit song. As a final note, ever since hearing Yahtzee of Zero Punctuation talk about how games made by small developers or even single people feel so much more personal, I tried to look for the personal touches in games like this. With all the great attention to detail, and especially after viewing the golden ending, it really does feel like the game was handcrafted with love, which is what elevates it from good to great for me, and earns it a spot on my list at number 90. And there we have it for today. 3 more off the list, but of course, I've still got a long way to go to wrap this project up. I really love looking back at the games I've played, so thank you for sticking around and listening to me continue to ramble on. Hope to see you next time, and goodbye.